Hi, GDR here in beautiful Jamaica with another little podcast on writing where so many people have asked me how do I get started in writing. I've been trying to give you a few tips from my side, just how I do it. These are not the first, middle or last word on anything, remember. It's just one opinion, just one way. Your way of writing might be completely different and so on, and it's no less valid than mine. So let's keep that in mind. We've looked already at things like story, plot, narrative, and structure. We looked at characters. I want to look right now at dialogue, a really significant part of writing, particularly creative writing, but also fictional writing. I read a book recently which involved some dialogue between characters that was fabricated and guessed by the historian, saying this is a supposition. People might have spoken like this, but it was riveting. It was so well constructed and so well done that it was as good as any dialogue I'd read in a novel anywhere. So dialogue can appear anywhere. It can appear in an essay, in any of your writing forms, your short story, your novel. You're probably going to find a need for dialogue somewhere. Once again, what I try to do with any word, any part that I work with, I go back to the etymology of it, and I think, where did the word come from? What's the root of the word? And if we look at this here, we have the Greek from, if you can check this out, and I've got this here. From dialogue we get dia, meaning through, and we get logos, meaning word, thought, or meaning. We get the word logic from logos, and dia will form all the way in many other different words. It'll form as an attachment in the beginning. So what does it mean, dialogue? Dialogos means meaning, thoughts, purpose, expression, moving through and into words. Okay, so meaning. In the original root of the word, meaning is a significant part. That means, have a think about this, if your characters are, say, just asking each other, so what was the weather like in your part of the state today? And the other one's saying it was fine, and what was the weather like in your part of the state? And they go on and on about this in a sort of banal way. It's probably not going to move your story forward very quickly. You're probably going to lose your readers. Why? Because it's lost its logos, it's lost its meaning. So dialogue is there to carry meaning, to express meaning, to take the reader into another level of meaning because it's spoken by characters. But meaning is critically important. Your dialogue should mean something. It should be a meaningful expression between characters. It can be loaded. You can have just 3 sentences between 2 characters, but you can load so much meaning into what they're saying with each other, right? So going from the root of the word, focus on that. Now, 4 kinds of, conversation that were traditionally talked about. Of course, there's thousands, but traditionally you'll find that there are 4 kinds, debate, discourse, dialogue, and diatribe. And diatribe isn't just, hateful invective or something, or being nasty about someone. It's usually, a diatribe is usually very witty, cleverly constructed, politically astute. Perhaps it might be a withering diatribe about a political policy or something that's written in such a clever way that it then endures, and people want to keep it and keep reading it and passing it on. Because that diatribe, even though it's a negative thing and not really part of discourse, finds its way into the discourse. It finds its way into the language. So we have these 4 to look at. And so among those, dialogue is the one that we're focused on here. Let's look at something like authenticity for your dialogue. The key point for any writer of dialogue for characters is that they authentically speak as they would. So for a start, an authentic voice for each character is required. You need to hear them in your own voice. Your characters that you're creating, you need to hear what they sound like. They need to have an accent. They need to have a way of speaking. So firstly, go into their authentic voice. What is authentically theirs? When you call up mom on the phone, when I called up my mom, I didn't say, "Hello, mother, this is your son Gregory calling." I just said, "Hi, mom," and my mom said, "Greg, it's great to hear you," because there was authenticity in just those 2 little words. The way I said, "Hi, mom," was my way of saying it to my mother, and the authenticity was locked in. I didn't need to tell her who it was any more than that. So that kind of authenticity is what you're searching for, a recognizable voice, the voice in the crowd that that's your loved one because you can hear their voice just a tiny bit, above that crowd or in that crowd, but you know it so well, of that authentic sound of your loved one's voice. You can pick, or a child's voice, that you can hear. Maybe a kid's cry. A mother can hear their cry, their child's cry, in a little field of cries in a playground. They can know that's my kid making that noise, if you know what I mean. Authentic. So go for that first. Be as authentic as you can in the sound of the voice. Now, how do we get there to authenticity? We look at different ways of creating natural sound. If we see here, we've got cadence. Now, cadence, once again, if we go back to etymology, where does the word cadence come from? It comes from cadere, meaning to fall. It's to do with a fall. Okay, what kind of fall? Well, let's think about, for instance, people who have, say, a high-rising terminal at the end of a sentence. So those people may have in that, for instance, they may say, and I go to the park in summer days, and it may go up. You have a high-rising terminal. That's a cadence. The cadence is the rise and fall. Put it this way. The rhythm, if we look here, the rhythm, another factor of this, the rhythm is the flow. The cadence is the peaks and troughs, the peaks and the fall. Where does it peak and fall is the cadence of how someone speaks. Instead of saying, for instance, Tower Isle, as a place where people live, they might say Tower Isle and put the emphasis on the first word because that's their cadence, okay? So the rhythm that they speak may be similar to someone else's rhythm, but the cadence will be unique. So think about the cadence, the rhythm of how they speak. Are they a slow, laconic speaker? Are they someone who speaks rapidly and as though they're desperately trying to get the words out quickly, and if they don't, all those words will build up inside them and explode? So they have to do it really. What kind of person are we talking about here? That's going to be expressed in the rhythm of how they speak. Idiosyncrasies. Once again, idios, sin, and krasis. If we go back to the etymology of this word, idios, the self, sin, with, and krasis, with expression through. So it means a unique expression of a temperament, which is a set of qualities, a set of characteristics. They used to be called the humours, for instance, in different times. But it's that set of characteristics that make up a person's temperament and so on. The temperament, they have to maybe snappy in how they talk to people. What do you want? And so on. How dare you? They may be this kind of person. Or they may be very laconic and say, well, let me think about that before I give you a considered reply. And each person is going to have their own idiosyncrasies, which is their own way of expressing the full set of their temperament. Here we have tone and inflection. With tone and inflection, what we're getting at here is the very deep personal part of who someone is. We can get a tone word. Think of this. Someone can say in their conversation, I was happy yesterday when the sun came out after so much rain. Someone else can say, I was singingly happy yesterday after the sun came out, when the sun came out after so much rain. That little word is a tone word, singingly. It sounds like a tone, it has a bit of a bell in it, and so on. So you can pepper the dialogue of your character with tone words that colour who they are and how they express themselves. I know it sounds complicated, but this is your job, all right? Characters are complicated, people are complicated, and the more complex your character is, but the more easy it is for them to be understood, the more success you'll have with your characters, I think. So, okay, we get down here to abbreviation. In your dialogue, and we now talk about now that you've got these bits and pieces about how you're going to sprinkle the phrases that people use, let's talk about how people speak to each other in dialogue. Number one, I think it's always unwise, and you have to be really careful if you use your characters to move the story forward with exposition. The character, I literally read in a science fiction novel many years back where I didn't know what was going on at this point in the science fiction novel, and I'm sure the writer got that, and rather than go back and rewrite it, one character said to another character, I have absolutely no idea what's going on right now. Can you tell me? So the other character summed up and did the whole supposition in about 3 pages of exposition dialogue. That's exactly the kind of thing we would try to avoid. Let the characters speak for themselves in their situation from their hearts emotionally. Let them speak from their emotional state as much as you can. Less from what they're thinking so much, because we can know what they're thinking. You're a writer. You can tell us what they're thinking. It's what they say to one another has more dramatic impact in that text. Whether you put parentheses or you just put that dialogue in there as naked dialogue, it's still people speaking to one another. So, when you're getting this and you start to get the feel of how they speak, think about abbreviating. Another point. It's possible to say, I cannot do what you want because I will not do such a thing. A character may say that to another character, I cannot do what you want because I will not do such a thing. But I don't know anyone who actually speaks like that. It's more likely to be, I can't do what you want because I won't do that. And if you get into those little abbreviations, I know in writing schools they're going to tell you, cannot, will not, do not. They'll do this. But when you go, and fair enough in your prose work, if that's what you want to do, but when your characters are speaking, abbreviate them. Let them speak very naturally. Let it become a natural sound of how people actually speak. Sit in restaurants, cafes, whenever COVID allows us, sit there and listen to people speaking to each other and listen to how they speak. I've done this everywhere, and I always get a little piece of dialogue between two people. Incidentally, it's not intimate, it's not because they're in a public place, but it's the way people are speaking to each other that's expressing something so fully. So, and that's so natural, and get that natural abbreviated speech if you can. Now, another point about dialogue. If you can, within your dialogue, allow your characters to express themselves. Give your characters a little space within not every bit of dialogue, but within a dialogue exchange, to say something about who they are that isn't yet in that text. That's a surprise for the reader. That's what makes the hair stand up, because it's something, whoa, we thought we knew everything because the writer took us up to this point and we thought the writer told us everything. Isn't it the omniscient author? Suddenly a character says something that the writer is not even alluded to in the text. This is dramatic. The other thing is, remember, think about every TV series you've seen that's a successful TV series. What happens in those series when you get to a cliffhanger point and so on? Someone will say to the other character, so, why did you do that on that night? Now that we know you were there, now that we know that you had the weapon in your hand, why did you do that? And the camera will go on to the other person, they'll look at them and then they'll pause and look down, and we're into an ad break, or whatever, or we'll cut to another scene. Remember this, it works. The cliffhanger. You don't have to explain everything in every exchange of dialogue between your characters. You can leave a mystery. You can leave it a bit confusing. Life is a bit confusing. You can do this as you speak, as your characters speak. Let them do this. Let one character be baffled and go, but why? Why? Because you too as a reader are going to go, why? Why? I want to know why. And if that character is saying what you're thinking and the other one refuses to tell you, it's like, now I have to read more to find out, if you know what I mean. Keep these things in your mind. Look at the dialogue that's working in television shows that really work, that are really successful, in movies that have been lauded for their screenplays of how characters express each other and with each other, express themselves with each other. Get into that dialogue that you hear around you as well, movies and TV and so on, the really successful dialogue, the stuff that works for you, the stuff that made you think, I love that show, and so on. Go back, look at the dialogue, check it out again, listen to it and think, aha. There's always a few tricks in there, all right? Always a few. Revelations, the refusal to reveal, also within it, the inner story about the person themselves and so on. And never forget the little frisson, if there is just a little bit, if two characters are attracted to each other and the author knows it, the readers suspect it, but the characters don't know it, you can pepper their dialogue between each other with the kind of thing that the readers are going with. They go, yeah, man, I get this. And the characters are still sort of stiffly resisting, but their dialogue is still in there to keep that interest going. That's also something that can work in that. And now I'm just going to pull out of that, all of that, and talk about one other aspect as the last bit of this. Humor. I think humor, the two hardest things to write in writing, and I think most people will agree, most writers will agree, is a really good sex scene, damn hard. And there are awards for bad sex scenes. That's how hard it is to write a good one. And humor. To be really laugh out loud funny, to make people laugh out loud when they're reading a book, not so easy to do. All of us as writers struggle with this. We achieve it every now and then, fantastic. Sometimes by accident, sometimes we really work at it. But humor is really important. Now, why am I saying this about dialogue? Writers who are writing a book where there's an author, it's in the third person, the author is speaking, Bobby's over here, Sajit is there, and so on, Diane's over here thinking this. The author sort of knows everything that's going on. In such an environment, if the author is being funny, then that pulls the author into an arena of funny writers who pepper their prose with funny stuff. If you do this, that's great, but you need to pull it off all the way through, and it's hard to maintain that without every now and then being a bit nasty or a bit cynical or something in that humor. So it's not that easy to maintain, but if that's your thing, go for it. I would advise that when you want to put humor into what you're doing, make it a situation around a character that's not the author necessarily. If the author is speaking, it's not a narrative author, but put it around a character and build the dialogue into that humor. And if you do this, you're not only making it funny, but because you've got the scenario for the humor, you've got the situation, and you've got the speech of something somebody says that's just a funny thing at that time, but you're also taking people into it in a way that it isn't if you're sitting back at your desk and saying something terribly witty. Oh, I'm so intelligent and I've just said something very funny. And I hope we'll go on now. Excuse me, I digressed from my characters for a little while. As I just said a witty remark, I hope you enjoyed it. Now we'll get back to the book and we'll talk to the characters again. If you don't do that, and if you let the humor be situational around your characters and spoken through the characters and so on, you are out of that scenario as the writer, and they have taken over. And people will engage with dialogue, with someone speaking something and doing something, much more than they will with the author sitting in an armchair and making a funny comment, no matter how funny it is. So that's sort of where I'd advise you to go, and that's why I'm linking this with dialogue. Think about humor in regard to this. All right, learn all you can about dialogue. Listen to the people who've done lots of dialogue before. Listen, there's so many good podcasts on this, and practice, practice, practice. And every time you do, sit down. Here's a great practice. I'll just leave you with this. 3 characters, not 2, because it's a challenge. So 3 characters are sitting at a table and they are discussing the nature of truth. So it's something obviously nobody can answer anyway, so that's why I chose that. 3 characters, and you have to have 3. It's your choice. That's your task, if you like, your practice. 3 characters talking about truth. 3 different perspectives, and you need to do this for like a good 7, 8, 9 sentences each. And you have to maintain the integrity of their character through that. And just write that. And you don't have to put he said, she said, whatever. You can just literally put them line by line and put, subject A, subject B, subject C. You can do whatever, and just bang, bang, bang. Get that dialogue out. Work on that as a practice again. And then write a dialogue scene between 2 people who are, let's say, breaking up. Then write a dialogue scene between 2 people who are declaring their love for each other, and they've both been madly in love, but neither of them knew that the other one was. And you've got to write that. Write a scene where somebody is saying to their doctor, thank you for telling me that I just got cancer, but can I comfort you because you must have to do this every day. This must break your heart. Can I give you a hug? Something like this, a challenge. And so on, challenge yourself and write it. It's 1.5 pages. Get it out. Look at your bits and pieces here of how you're going to put it together, and go into this and practice, practice, practice. And if you've got it, please don't throw it away. Keep all your work forever. It's part of your archive, all right? Now, blessings and love. The next time I talk to you guys, I want to talk about the hardest thing to write, which is blessings and love from Jamaica. One love.